Good day and welcome to this video in which we are going to look at the two key data elements in your deterioration model. These two data components are basically your raw input data and your model parameter data. Now, of course, in the details of your model there are many other elements, data elements, which play a role, such as your budget setup, your committed treatments and so forth. But the two key building blocks of your overall model, once the model starts running, remain the raw input data and the model parameter data. So let's look at the raw input data set first. This input data set will typically come from your asset management system. So if you're using Juno Viewer, you will use data joins and so forth to extract data out of the different tables in your asset management system and use statistical parameters to represent each model element, which you can see shown here in the different rows, and to provide the current condition, ages and so forth related to each one of those elements. The second element then is your model parameter data. Now the model parameter data is basically initially extracted from the raw input data set, as you can see here. So during the initialization stage of the model, we extract certain columns from the raw input data set, and these columns then become our model parameters. Very often during this initialization, we will want to do some sort of a conversion, or we want to do some lookups or modify the data from the raw input data until it gets into the model parameter data. And that needs to be done through your domain model, where you can put the specific rules in place that govern how the initial data is transferred into the model parameter data set. So here you can see in our model parameter set, we've extracted the age column, the condition A and condition B columns. We did not extract the material type and the region columns. And in this example, the reason for that is that these parameters are not changing over time. So to keep your model as lean and to run as fast as possible, never extract elements from the raw data into model parameters unless you are sure that you want to use these parameters because they change over time. As the model then steps forward, it will take this model parameter set and move from one epoch to the next epoch to then modify these values. So you can see these ages have all been incremented with one period as we move forward, and similarly condition A and B has changed slightly and so forth. Don't make the mistake of thinking that once the model starts running that it's no longer has an eye on the raw input data set. The raw input data set is always available to use in your domain model to instruct the model what to do with model parameters. So for example, this field with region may play a role in determining how fast certain elements are going to deteriorate. And the JCass model framework model has access to the raw input data fields as well as the fields in the model parameter data. Another way of looking at this is to look at how the model creates model parameter data as it steps over different modeling periods. So here we've got our raw input data set, and here we are creating our model parameter data. So we start off in the initialization stage with epoch 0, in which we extract our model parameter data as I've just explained. And as the model then steps forward in time, we create more and more of these arrays which hold our model parameter data, and the model then steps through all of the modeling periods to create a matrix that looks like this with all of the model parameter data. And once again, during this process, the Juno Cassandra model always has an eye on the raw input data set, and it can then also extract columns or information from this raw input data set to inform the model for decision making and so forth. Now, if you haven't gone through the online documentation in detail, just to highlight again, I've used the terms modeling period and modeling epoch. Basically, we use this type of formulation, which is quite common in Markov transition models. We have a modeling periods, which is normally used to express a period during which things take place. So for example, you apply a treatment during a period, you trigger a treatment during a period, and so forth. A epoch is then a snapshot of the condition of the network at the end of a period. So epoch 1, if I look at my model parameter data at epoch 1, it means it's the condition at the end of period 1. At the end of epoch 2 is the end of period 2, and so forth. Of course, there is no period 0 because the model starts for period 1, and epoch 0 is basically the condition of the network at the start of the modeling run. Now, let's just look at how you actually inform your Juno Cassandra model about these two data components. First, let's look at raw input data. The raw input data has to be provided through a CSV file in which the location and the name of which is specified in the meta setup file. That is for the desktop version of Juno Cassandra. For the web version, we will probably over time extract this data directly from the database and make it available to the model. Then we also have to tell Juno Cassandra which columns are in the raw input data file and what their names are and what their data types are. So this is done in the model setup file. So in the model setup file, we have a sheet which is a mandatory sheet where we specify the column names and the data types for the raw input data. I've also got a column here which has some example data because I normally like to take my raw input file and just transpose the first row in it to create this set to inform the model about which columns are available in the raw input data. Now, it's very important that you have a identical mapping between this list of column names and their data types and the raw data file. If you have more columns in your raw data file than you have in this list, or vice versa, then Juno Cassandra will throw an error to tell you that you've got more columns in your raw data file than you've got in your column definition list, and vice versa. So that's just an important thing to note. The second element then is model parameters. How do we tell the model about what our model parameters are? The first issue, the first way to do that is through the parameter sheet of our model setup file. And that basically looks like this. So we have a sheet in our model setup file which defines the different parameters, their data types, minimum, maximum, the number of decimals, and optionally you can have a comment field to comment on what these model parameters are. And this model parameter list, it comes from your deterioration model setup file, and the name of the setup file again needs to be specified in your model meta file, which basically defines where everything is that the model must use. So that's it for this short video on these two key data elements in your Juno Cassandra model. Thanks for watching.